Hello everyone and welcome to another video from Carl's Tech Shed. What I've got for you today is a scanner which I'm going to do a teardown of. Not this one here, this one here. Now I'm sure most of you are familiar with the traditional flatbed scanners, however this is what's known as a drum scanner. Now this was purchased in the early 1990s for around £50,000, and the reason these cost so much is because the quality of the image once it's scanned is incredibly higher than the flatbed scanners could offer at the time. Now a traditional flatbed scanner uses a CCD or an image sensor, whereas these drum scanners use what's known as a photo multiplier tube. In this case, from what I can see in the documentation I found online, this uses 3 photo multiplier tubes for the image. That would be one for each primary colour. Now the photo multiplier tube is basically a vacuum tube or a valve which is sensitive to light, and this then converts it into an electrical signal. So this should have some rather interesting equipment inside it, and that's why I'm going to take it apart and we'll see what's in it. But just first I'll give you a rough idea of what this looks like from the outside. Now as you can see there's this very heavy cover on the front here which just goes over the drum as it's scanning. As you can see it just slots in there. It's a little bit loose at the moment. I think a few things are not quite fitting right, which is probably why it's faulty, but never mind. Just down the bottom here, if I open this up you'll see a small old AT style case which I think has probably a 486 era PC in there. This is not actually used for the imaging. This is simply used to control the mechanics of the machine and control the rotation and the scanning, and then the image would then be transferred from the scanner over to, I believe, an Apple Mac computer, but none of that came with this machine. Now if we have a look around the back of here, we can see the back of the machine, and you can see there's a lot of these DB25, DB9 and what looks like a DB40 connector all down here. So this baby AT case would obviously have some proprietary cards on the motherboard which would allow interfacing the rest of the scanner with this machine, so we'll take a look at that in detail as well. And just one more thing I wanted to show you on the front. As you can see, this is the drum where the image would be mounted. So if you've got an A4 sheet of paper, this would be wet mounted directly onto this drum. The drum then rotates, and the image sensor at the back just down here would move vertically up and down as the drum rotates. Now from what I can see this would spin at some speed. I don't have any numbers at the moment as to how fast it would spin, but I'm sure I can find out. But most importantly I'm going to take this apart and we'll see what's inside it. Now before I take this apart I thought I'd just plug it in and turn it on and see if anything happens, but it turns out that the fault seems to be with the power supply, because I've plugged a cable into it and nothing seems to be happening. There's a small switch on the side here and I can hear some arcing when I turn that on and off, so it is receiving power, but unfortunately nothing seems to be happening. I've even pressed the power button on the small case down the bottom there, and again there's absolutely no signs of life, so I don't feel so guilty about tearing this down now. But yeah, I'm going to take the side panels off and we'll have a look behind there. Okay, well I've taken the outer casing off, and as you can see I think this is some sort of fiberglass, because if you look on the inside you can see like this pattern where it's been blown into a mould, and a couple of the screws were rounded off and I weren't able to get them off, so I had to break this in one part, and as you can see it sort of splinters very similar to fiberglass with these very thin strands, so I'm pretty sure this is made of fiberglass. Now this is what the machine looks like without the casing on. Now as you can see you can't let the plasticky look of the outer casing fool you. This is incredibly heavy. I think it weighs about 150 kilos. As you can see, all of this is solid steel plate. This is sort of 1/4-inch steel plate. It's incredibly heavy, and the bottom part here, this is 1/2-inch steel plate as well, and this runs right to the back of it. All of this is welded into place. And then you've got this incredibly powerful motor. Well, I say incredibly powerful. Powerful for a piece of computer equipment, you might say. I'm not actually sure what the specs on this are. I haven't looked yet. We'll have a quick look now. Now I've just looked at the label, and this is 180 watts and it rotates at 16 to 1700 RPM. There's a few other specs on there. I might put a high-res photo of that up. And as you can see here, we've got a large metal box here which has another IEC power cable going into it and what looks like a DB25 coming out of it. And from what I can see, there's a lot of cables and such on the front coming out of this, and there's a couple of boards in here as well. So I'm going to take the cover off this in a moment and we'll see what's in there. But most importantly now, I can get the AT case out of the front and we can have a look at some of the cards that are inside that. And then round the front you can see the image pickup assembly here. Now I'm pretty sure that the photo multiplier tubes are going to be in here or just below, so we'll also have a look at those. But as you can see, this is incredibly well built. I mean, look at the thickness on that metal. That is incredibly thick. I think that's steel, but it explains why this weighs so much. But I suppose with a piece of equipment like this, when you've got a drum rotating at 1600 RPM, which weighs 2 or 3 pounds, you need to keep it steady, especially if you're trying to pull an image off of it. So yeah, that certainly explains why this is so heavy. Okay, well this is the case which was in the bottom, so I've taken the side off of this, but first of all I'll let you have a look at the back of some of the connectors here. Now this one here I thought was quite unusual because this card has 3 rows of pins on the connector, whereas all of the others just have 2. Now obviously this is just a 50-pin SCSI connector. This would be used for transferring the image data over to a computer or an Apple Mac machine. Here we've just got a VGA card. Now all of these cards here, with the exception I think of this port here, which I think is just a serial port coming off of this card, I think all of these are either going to be proprietary or semi-proprietary, specially designed for these drum scanners, because all of these ports were populated with cables which I've unplugged out the back. I'm going to take each one of these out one by one and let you have a look at them, but first I'll let you have a look at the main board. Now originally I thought this was a 486, as I mentioned. It turns out this is actually a 386. So if I show you that little chip down there, as you can see that's an AMD 386SX running at 40 megahertz. Just to the side of it you've got a small socket which is unpopulated. Obviously that would be for a coprocessor which is not installed. There's a couple of memory modules here which are 30-pin SIMs. I haven't had a look at those, but it's probably not going to have much memory, maybe 2, 4 or maybe even 8 megabytes if we're lucky. But unfortunately this board has suffered the same fate as a lot of these old AT boards, where the CMOS or BIOS battery leaks and then corrodes the board. So unfortunately I don't think this is going to work anymore. I did briefly power this up. I did try and plug a power connector into here, and although I could hear arcing when I plugged in the power cord, nothing actually happened. I switched the machine on and off at the front and there was certainly no sign of life. So I think maybe it could have been something as simple as a power supply failure in this part of the machine, which then led to the machine being disposed of. But unfortunately, especially now that I see that the CMOS battery has failed as well, there's not really much point in me repairing this, even if it did have any value. And in the top here, as you can see, we've got an old Western Digital Caviar 2200 hard drive. This is just 212.6 megabytes, that's 0.2 gigabytes. It has a limited 1-year warranty. I think it's safe to say that's long expired by now. But yeah, it's just a standard IDE connection onto the board. Now I'm pretty sure that this hard drive would have held very little, if any, of the imaging data. I think this just holds enough enough information to get the machine booted up, and then allows the image transfer directly from the image drum and the pickup over to the host machine, because I think the image would be a lot larger. It's quite possible it could be a lot larger than 212 megs if you take an image from that scanner. But as I said before, I'm going to take some of these cards out and we'll have a look at those in detail. Okay, well these are the boards which were inside that AT case. I've cleaned them up a little bit because they were incredibly dusty and it was difficult to see any part numbers. Well, I'll start with these two at the top because these are quite simple. At the top here we've just got a Trident TVGA 9000 series VGA graphics card. This just has, I think, 512K or 1 meg of VRAM. And this one here is just a very basic serial and parallel interface card, which also had IDE and floppy interfaces for the drives on the front and the hard drive. Now over here we'll look at this top one. Now just to start off with, all of these from what I can see are very obviously on a very small production line because all the serial numbers are handwritten on that one and the bottom one here. The serial numbers just at the end here. So if we have a look here, we can see that there's a couple of connectors here. These were unpopulated, there was nothing plugged into these, so these are probably for additional options or something like that. We've got a lot of these A to D converters just along here. We've got some PLDs which are socketed, another PLD there. I think this under here is a GAL. We've got an NCR SCSI controller and an InMOS chip. Now, I wasn't able to find much detail about this one. There's a couple of other InMOS chips which are on the other boards, which I'll go into in more detail in a moment. But as I suspected, this riser card here, this is just a SCSI controller because you've got the 50-pin interface here, and then under here I've just disconnected this one. There's another InMOS chip here, another GAL, and a few other small ICs, and what looks like another PLD, and I think there's just some bridge logic or something like that here. And secondly, if we have a look at this card here, again this is made specifically by NMOS, and you'll notice that we've got a lot of these unpopulated banks here. So we'll start at the end here. We've just got a small ASIC here. I wasn't able to pull any information up about that because some of the part number is rubbed off. I don't think that's intentional, it's just because of age. Now we seem to have a lot of these gold ceramic type ICs. Now if I can get the light just right, you'll be able to see that these are InMOS IM-ST805s. From what I could see, these are 32-bit floating point units, and each module has 1 megabyte of RAM. So you've got 6 of these in total. You've got 5 which are socketed, and then 1 which is directly mounted onto the board. As you can see, we've just got a small capacitor here, and looks like a real-time clock or something, I'm not entirely sure. But all of the date codes are around 1993 from what I can see. And finally, on the last board here, we've got a very large heatsink on what looks like some sort of power device. I haven't taken this off yet, so I don't know what's under there. Again, we've got a couple more of these PLDs. We've got a few socketed ICs here. And one thing you'll notice, which is common with all of these cards, they just have standard 16-bit ISA connection, which would have been the world standard at the time for 386 era machines, would have been 8 and 16-bit ISA. Now I just noticed this small chip down here which had a small label on it. I've just peeled this off, and this looks like a PIC. So again, 1993 date code, so yeah, interesting. Well, this is the large PCB which was mounted on the back of that metal plate that was in the back of the machine. As you can see on the bottom board here, we've just got a few connectors and some basic power supply components. There's a transformer at the back there, but apart from that there's not really much on that board because everything leads onto this top board. As you can see here, we've got a whole row of, I think, 6 of these K1745 N-channel FETs. So they've got a rather large heatsink on all of those. But what you'll find is that it may look like these are all on one large heatsink, but they're all individually heat-sinked, and this on here is just a piece of plastic. Now again, here we've just got a bridge rectifier here. Over here we've got another transformer, so it looks like this is stepping down 230 down to 12 and 5 volts. Here we've got a rather large capacitor, and just here we have an Intel P8398 microcontroller. So that would obviously be used to switch on and off, and the photo multiplier tubes and just about everything else which is connected to this. So yeah, that would just power everything and control it and switch it all on and off in sequence. Well, I'm just looking at this now, and originally I thought that the photo multiplier tubes might be in this box here, but it seems that this is probably just a very high intensity lamp, because if I follow back all of these small fibre optic leads, these all go into this trunking here. Now originally I thought, well okay, this probably just goes in the back here somewhere, but I've actually traced that, and it actually goes all the way down here, and it looks like it goes into the bottom here, which is unusual. I didn't expect it to go all the way down here, but we'll take this off, and I'm going to see if the photo multiplier tubes are in here. Well, I'd taken this out just to have a closer look at it, and originally when I saw this, I had a quick look through here and I could see what looked like a valve or something. I thought, oh, maybe that's one of the photo multiplier tubes, and you know, this has some sort of optical assembly where the light passes through one, goes into another, and then goes into a third, and each one picks up a primary colour. But instead it looks like this is just a lamp of some kind, which I'm not really certain on how that works, because it looked like the main lamp was in that larger box where I originally thought the photo multiplier tubes were. So I think I'm going to have to do a bit more investigating into this and try and find out some more information. Well, I just started taking the 4 bolts out of this. I couldn't get the 4th one off because this seems to be jammed here. And then I made a small discovery. I had a look back down here where this small module was that I just showed you, and I saw that this is obviously coming in here, and the lamp was mounted about here, and then it went through here and it hit here. Now originally I don't know why I didn't notice. I didn't see this mirror here. I thought this went through to the other side because I saw that there were a few bits on the other side, but no. This mirror here is mounted vertically, and this is again at 45 degrees, so this goes up here. So when you follow this up here, this goes up to the main head. So when you look at into here, if I just go around here and let you have a look into here, see if I can angle the camera just enough so you can see it. Basically that's just a lens in there. I don't think you can see it, but that's just a lens. And then when I looked here, I realised that it's quite possible that instead of having the lamp here shining here and it comes off of here or something like that, it might be that each one of these is effectively like a light or a lamp. So this illuminates the page from 3 angles. I'm not sure what exactly is going on here, but perhaps the image then bounces into here and then goes back into here. So perhaps the photo multiplier tubes are in here after all. Perhaps I had the light path the wrong way round, so instead of light coming out of here and being picked up by these fibre optics, maybe it's coming out of the fibre optics, bouncing off of here or something like that, and then going into here. So I'm going to see if I can get this out. I have a method of getting this out, because originally I can't get this small bolt out because it's obscured by here. Now obviously I don't want to go cutting, you know, sort of half-inch steel plate, you know, I'm not into that, not at this time of day. So I think what I'll do is there's a screw here which moves this up and down, so I'll see if I can rotate that by hand and just get this to a level where I can then prop it up and hopefully try and remove this panel and see if there are any photo multiplier tubes in there. Well, it seems that I was right to start with. It seems that the photo multiplier tubes are in this top assembly here. Now, while I was taking this apart, I did actually, you know, my mind was running round, and I did think about what this optical assembly was doing just here. So if you can imagine, the fibre optics from this little bit here will bear in mind that the fibre optics were running not from the centre but from these small fibre optics here, and these are mounted at 3 points around the edge. So these all ran down into here. Around here was where the lamp module was mounted, so you would have had light coming out of the lamp, going up the fibre optics and coming out of those 3 little lenses which surround the sensor. So I then thought about this. So you've got this mirror here, which again is coming from the lamp. You've then got the light passing up here, and then you've got a lens which then comes out of here. So the image which would be mounted on the drum is being illuminated both from the back and from the front. which would then obviously allow the photomultiplier tubes to pick up a very high signal optically from the page, and then convert that into what would be an analog signal, and then that could be converted into a digital signal by the PC, which was in the bottom of it, using the HD converters, which were on one of those boards. So I'm going to take some high-res pictures of this, and I'm going to take this apart a bit further, because it's a very interesting piece of equipment. Okay, well, I've been busy for the last couple of days, so I haven't really had a chance to take any more of this apart. But this afternoon I've decided to take the rest of this apart and hopefully try and get the chassis down to the scrapyard at some point. As you can see, the optical assembly which held the photomultiplier tubes, I've removed that, so I'll show you that in a bit more detail in just a minute. I've also been able to have a look at how some of the cabling is arranged, and I've got a pretty good idea now on how this worked. So again, I'll go into a bit more detail on that in just a minute. As you'll see, the motor's now been taken out. That's now sitting on the floor. It's a perfectly good motor. It's a shame to scrap it, so I'll probably keep that or donate it or something. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with that yet. But overall, that's pretty much all that was in there, which I've already shown you. This piece of metal here, this is just to keep the vertical assembly from moving, because as you see, it's on this small worm gear, and even though it doesn't move too much, I still didn't want it moving as I was taking things apart from it, so I just wedged that in there to stop it moving. Yeah, well, I'll let you have a look under here now. This is the small board which was sitting just under here, so this would have moved up and down with the vertical assembly, and as you can see here, we've just got a high voltage transformer. This is for the photomultiplier tubes, so you've got standard 12 volt input and 0.7 kV output. The board itself also handles the signal from the photomultiplier tubes in the optical assembly. Obviously that just feeds that back down to these connectors here. So one of these is an input for control, the other one is an output for signal output. Now you'll notice that this small black cable here and this capacitor, this is for the high voltage 0.7 kV feed, which goes up to the photomultiplier tubes. So you see, there's no connection between the high voltage and the data bus. And while I was taking a few other bits off of this, I found a small tag on here from the manufacturer. As you can see, it was made by iTech Colour Graphics Limited. There's a serial number which is embossed in there, and as you can see, the weight there is 140 kilos, which isn't far off what I assumed it would be. I think I said it was about 150, so I wasn't far off that. Well, this is the optical assembly which I removed. As you can see, it's quite an interesting piece of kit. What we've got here, we've got the main lens assembly at the front here, so this more or less makes contact with the drum. So the light then travels through here, hits this mirror which is on a 45-degree angle. It then hits another mirror here which is at 45 degrees again, so it's being reflected across here and then down here. Now we've got this small wheel here which acts as an aperture, so you've got this part here which is obviously black, which allows no light through, and then you've got holes which are incrementally larger, so you can go from a very small hole right up to a very large hole there, and then the light then travels through here. It then goes into this series of prisms, which again splits the light into red, green and blue, and this is where the photomultiplier tubes would sit. As you can see, I've just taken these out for safety because I don't want to break those at this point. And if we flip this around, the photomultiplier tubes connect in here, and as you can see, there's a lot of resistors on the back of here, and there's only three cables coming out of each of these. Obviously, one would be for ground, one would be for power, and the other one is for the signal. Now the signal cable is obviously that blue one just there, and if we go round here again, we can see that that blue cable goes onto this small riser board here, and all of these surface mount components, these are all the surface mount ICs, these are all different flavours of op amps. So you've got 4 op amps for each photo multiplier tube. Obviously you've got some capacitors and resistors and such, which are just to support the op amps. And then you've got this high-speed connector here, which goes through to the other board. And if we look again here, we've just got some power circuitry, some capacitors, and a few other connectors. This was the main connector which goes off to that small board which I showed you, which has the 0.7 kV transformer on it, and then from that it breaks out into that D-sub style connector, which would then go over to one of the boards in the 386 PC. And then on the underside we just have these 2 stepper motors, which just control that aperture wheel, and a shutter for the main optical input. As you can see, those just connect onto that small riser board there. Okay, well this is one of the photo multiplier tubes. As you can see, this is made by Hamamatsu in Japan. It was made in August 1995, and these are all the same model number. They're R1546, and as you can see, the light hits that little aperture just there, and then it's amplified within the tube. I'll try and put up an information sheet about how these work, because I'm sure that would explain it a lot better than I can. As you can see, there was 3 of these in the machine, because you would need 1 for each primary colour. And if we have a look back over at this optical assembly, you can see, if I turn this round, you can see at the bottom there it says green, that one's red, and it's probably got blue written underneath there, but there's a little blue sticker, so yeah, you'd have 1 for each primary colour. And just going back to this, you've got this prism assembly, which looks very colourful when you actually look at it. It's actually a lot more colourful in real life than what you're actually seeing on the video camera here, but each of these gives off a very lovely colour of both green, blue, and red. So it's a fantastic piece of optical kit just there. I really like that. Okay, I just want to come back to this card here, which I took out of the machine last time. Now, I've done some digging and found some information on this. Now, it looks like these floating point units, at least in this system anyway, they work in pairs, so I'm guessing you'd have 1 for each primary colour, so you've got 2 for blue, 2 for red, 2 for green, and then obviously this data is processed and temporarily held in these in 1 megabyte of these SIP packages, which are quite unusual. It's not often you see these. I think the last time I saw these SIP packages it was on an old ISA graphics card, and I think that only had about 256k of RAM on it. So yeah, it's unusual to see these now. But even more so, it's unusual because if you look at these ones now, these are obviously plug-in modules. So you can see you've got slot 7, slot 3, slot 8, and so on. But this one here doesn't seem to have any memory, because when I looked this part number up, I couldn't really find much information about it. But certainly not a memory chip. So I'm not sure what this is doing for the RAM for this one. So yeah, they must have done something with that. So it looks like this board is just the system controller, as you can see there with the PIC. This probably just manages all the mechanics in the system, switching things on and off, motors and sensors and such, which is why you've got a lot of power components up here, and you've got a very large fuse and a few caps up there as well. And it looks like this board just takes data directly from the floating point units and the attached memory, and just converts that into a SCSI signal, which can then be picked up by an external machine. Well, as you can see, there's not really much left in here at all. There's just a few miscellaneous cables and boards, but nothing of any real interest. These 2 boards just have some low-level logic devices, so these are just for amplification, because as you can imagine these cables can get quite long, and especially when you've got a 3.3 or 5 volt signal, you certainly don't want any losses in a system like this. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you found that teardown interesting. I've also got a few pieces of networking equipment there which I picked up the other day. Most of those are probably going to be resold, but if I find anything interesting in there which I could do a teardown of, then I will. In the meantime, subscribe, and I'll try and have some more videos up very soon.